Everyone, good morning. It's Julie Coraccio and
Angela Coulter.
hey, good morning everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm super excited about what we're going to talk about today. Angela found this awesome article and it's going to really get us thinking. So go ahead, Angela, tell us about this great article and what we're going to talk about this morning.
Yeah, so actually it's really interesting because it was an article I saw posted on Facebook. It's on a website called Business Insider, and they were talking about how actually proven they've done research now to show that like actually a bunch of those who feel like that they have gluten sensitivity doesn't really exist. And I thought that was really funny, and it does tie into all the stuff that we talk about because they're looking at they did this study, and I have it printed out here, and it said, the subjects cycle through high gluten, low gluten, and no gluten or placebo diets without knowing which diet plan they're on at any given time. In the end, all of the treatment diets, even the placebo diet, caused pain, bloating, nausea, and gas to a similar degree. It didn't matter if the diet contained gluten or not. So there was no specific response to gluten, but yet the funny part is it shows what I thought was awesome about this particular study and the article is that it ties into this whole energy work and spiritual thing and the placebo effect and how our beliefs actually, manifest into what's in our body, whether it actually is some kind of physical trigger or not. So I think that's really funny because it just leaves so much wide open. And I know it'll probably peeve off some people saying, oh, no, but the funny thing is, they showed in this study that people who even got no gluten diets, and they had like a really pretty vanilla kind of diet, they still were having response because at some point it was like they believed, well, I have to have it, I have to have a response to this because I have this gluten sensitivity, and then their body reacted accordingly.
Right. Well, think about that. I mean, we talk about that a lot, about how you create your reality, and here is a study that shows that and how powerful the mind is. And when we were talking about it and you told me about it, what I find really interesting, I think gluten's a great example because not only do you have the individual creating that, but it's a societal thing now. Think about it. A whole gluten industry has popped up, so we've gotten on the societal bandwagon.
Right. So then it's a collective belief that we start to hold that, gluten is bad, right? It was like, cholesterol is bad, or this is bad, or this is, and it's funny because it's like, well, our bodies have processed it for how many eons and been okay. But, it's really interesting. And I'd like to just go back to that point of how, and many overlook this whole placebo effect thing, right? And when you talk about it in the science forums, people say, oh, well, that's just the placebo effect. Well, that's the core of the whole basis of when we talk about energy work and we talk about changing our reality. It all has to do with what we choose as our reality. And the placebo effect shows time and time again that it's not the medicine many times that heals us, it's ourselves that heal us. And many times it's simply by the willpower or the thought or the belief, actually more like the thought, the belief that I can heal myself, right? Or the knowledge or remembrance. So it's really important to look at it that way because we've done so much research and we have done a lot of stuff now in quantum physics, and they show like the intention experiments, I'm sure you know all about all those. So it's like, I love this article just because I was like, yeah, it's going to really annoy a lot of people by saying that, oh, no, well, I do have that gluten sensitivity. But sometimes you have to think, well, and there's no judgment on this. We have done this forever, and there are these beliefs of, I have to be sick to be part of the human condition. I have to get sick to be, a part of the group. I have to, have this disease or whatever in my identity so that people pay attention to me. I mean, and there's no judgment about that, but those are the things that I work with a lot of people on to release, because when we release those needs, then we can so easily release the stuff that ails us many times.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I've mentioned this probably more times than people care, but to me it was a huge deal. Like, I used to be deathly allergic to cats. I couldn't go anywhere without sneezing or taking like allergy medicine because I was a mess. I would whatever. So I met my husband. He has a cat. Well, you know what? I had no allergies from the time that I met the cat. Now, I know because I was constantly, you knew me well, we're friends, but I wanted to meet someone, but I was constantly working on myself and releasing. And the other big thing is I moved here when I was in West Virginia, I had allergies. Didn't have them in LA, moved here and had them again. Well, for the first time this spring, they hit in the spring and fall, they are minimal. which to me is huge. And if you were in North Carolina and people are like, what? I mean, most everyone here has allergies, but that's just a great example too. I mean, I'm living proof you can release them. You can change that.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I've worked with many people and worked with them to help them release their allergies, and it's only really finding the trigger of what causes the irritation to begin with. And so, this goes back to the belief versus, like the belief creating the manifestation. But many times, so all right, so we're going to go a little woo-woo, but many times it's stuff that happened in other lifetimes, other periods of time that they had experience with, that they hold beliefs about it being horrible. Like, I believe, and some of the experience I've had in working with people who feel like they have a gluten, sensitivity, is that they have, say, offense to the slave trade, and like because slave, like in how it used to be with slaves, and they might have been one, or they might have been a slave holder and been really cruel to theirs, and so they have this like judgment about that within them, and they hold this offense, and so then their body has that kind of offense to it. Cats are one of the biggest irritants, and most of it has to do with the history of how we have perceived cats, especially like black cats and stuff like that, and being, witches, witches familiars, and how many times we've been burned at the stake, or we've been, puritanical and been so offended by that and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, well, we need to just sort of dig into why that offense started, and then then you can release it. So it's pretty fascinating, because that's one of those things that people look at me like with like this disbelief in, and I'm like, because everything is changeable, and it's all created by our beliefs, by what we hold, by our journey, by our remembrance. And the more we remember about this is all being an illusion, the easier it is for us to just let go of it.
It just popped in my head. It's a little bit of a tangent, but someone online. But it's so fascinating to me. The more I have awakened and pay attention to this stuff, we are getting these messages that anything's possible, like Once Upon a Time, the Harry Potter series, as far as I'm concerned, because those are things that people in the public like, but that those are messages, in my opinion, to make us believe again, to be like, what, anything is possible.
Right. Right. And everything. And what, it's funny you say that, because I think I have said that statement, everything is possible, more in the past like 3 weeks than I've said ever to people. I always say everything is possible. And it's a great affirmation for us to start with every day. Everything is possible, because when we can accept that everything is possible, then everything can happen, and then we can shift everything to, our heart's content, to what's highest and best for us. But you're right. It's a lot of stuff there's a lot of stuff going out about that awakening and remembrance, and everything is possible. And I mean, I just came off teaching a class all weekend, and that's really, the whole joke in class was, there is no spoon. From the Matrix.
Yes. Yeah.
So every time I would go off on that tangent, one of the students would start laughing and say, there is no spoon. I'm like, right, we should have that as a mantra in this class.
There you go. I think you need to start making t-shirts with that.
And well, that and the easy button, then it's really easy, and we try to make it so complicated and hard and stuff. But, we are, and what's really important about that, which actually takes us off into another tangent on some other stuff that I had thought we would talk about today, but I see how it's sort of interrelated now, is that, I'm going to go really woo-woo for a minute here, but, several weeks ago at the end of April, my understanding is we went through another huge shift, and we have two realities that are superimposed on each other right now, which is why people are finding this struggle of one moment being in this absolute bliss and this other moment being totally sucked into the muck. And they're just like, why am I here? It's like up and down, up and down. It's because we're switching in between, because they're superimposed on each other. And part of this is the whole living from observation, and knowing that everything is possible, and knowing that if we allow ourselves to observe and create and stay out of the muck and stop getting lost in the whole egoic 3D thing, that we can change everything we want. So that's, ever since all that came into me, that's what I keep on saying. I'll get into these conversations over and over, and it's always, everything is possible.
Right. It truly is, but it's so interesting that we don't believe that. I mean, and I think that's with everyone. Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean? There's something big, I would say, for all of us that we have to get past thinking that we can't do or can't
right.
or whatever.
Well, right. And everybody who comes to me, it's really interesting. I mean, I can just go through case by case by case. I can't even tell you how many of those who've come to me in a place of, I was told that this will never change, either by a doctor, by a psychologist, by somebody else, or by society, you know.
Yeah.
And they're always like, well, can you help me with this? And I said, well, do you believe that you can change it? And because that's the first thing. If you don't, that's the first thing we work on, is releasing the things that cause you to disempower yourself, right? So, and say that the doctor knows more than I do, or somebody else knows more than I do about my own journey, and and then it's looking at what it is that causes it, the trigger, and why we feel like it serves us to remove that, you know, feeling. And then after that, we can remove anything. And I firmly stand on that. You know, it's what's interesting though is I also find myself always saying, be careful what you wish for too, because what many people don't realize is that when they remove something that's chronic or something that they've identified with a really long time, that actually changes them as well. And it's for the better, but you know, it's all about what their interactions with others is too.
Well, there's also a reason why people have beliefs. And so they, in my view, it's they get something out of it. You might not be conscious of what you get out of it, but you're getting something out of it, or otherwise you'd be able to let it go.
Right. Right. And that's what, you know, I have some clients that I'm working with and have worked with that had what you would consider terminal situations, you know, terminal illnesses or whatever. And one of the first things I ask them typically is, how does this serve you? How does this serve you? And it's not with any judgment. It's like, it serves you in some way, or else it would not be in your reality. You know, one man I worked with, he came down with a terminal illness, and I asked him that question, and he looked at me and he said, without hesitation, he said, it brought my family back together.
Mm.
He's like, because, you know, my kids are adults, my wife and I were sort of drifting apart, and me getting sick has brought us back together, has helped us become close again. And I was like, well, let's release the need to have the sickness. I mean, he chose to go, and that was his choice in his journey, because, you know, there are so many facets to our lessons. But I have also dealt with others who have who've changed their path and changed their diagnosis, so to speak, and became a completely different person than where they started.
But yeah, you know, I was just thinking, because it's about time for my annual physical, and you know, you're the same age as I am. We've got to get the annoying mammogram or whatever, blah blah blah. And you know, I had a time where they found a spot, and I said, and it ended up being a whatever that is, nothing benign, but like fibrous tissue. They said, you're drinking too much diet crack, which I've now quit, thankfully. But I'm always like, you know what? I'm not getting breast cancer, non-issue. And
Right.
I mean, I have other issues, trust me, we could spend hours on that, but on that particular thing, I'm like, I'm not getting it. It's it's not even in my zone, but because I so firmly believe that, and it's not going to happen.
Well, and the thing is, on top, so the next level beyond that is to say, then why would you even be afraid of having it to begin with, right?
Yeah, I mean, I just, in this particular case, I'm not.
Yeah. So,
It just doesn't, and it's not meaning that I don't listen and try to take good care of myself, but I feel a lot of women have a fear of that, because it's become a big issue, and you know, the pink ribbon and all that stuff's out there. And again, no judgment on this, but that's just something that's become a huge issue in our society. Now then I would look, well, like, what's going on with your getting here, and what the breasts represent and all that, but it's a non-issue for me. It's never in my mind. It's never been a worry for me.
right. Oh, well, yeah, and I don't even, like, that's all outside of my reality as well. I just sort of, but then here's the thing. If anything like that ever happened, I would know to look at what it was that came up, and I would just be able to work directly with it and to release the underlying cause of it. And I feel like, you know, it's funny, I tell people this and they sort of laugh, and I say, well, I have healed and cleared enough and done, I guess, enough purification, or whatever you want to call it. Everybody has a different word for it. of the practice of clearing, and that I've released the need to manifest sickness into my body to get a message from my higher self, and that's really what it is, right? So that takes a bunch of work, because we have a lot of cultural expectations, and like I said, there are these beliefs like I have to be sick to be in the human condition, I have to be sick to be loved or have attention. Like some people feel like the only way they get attention from other people is if they're sick or have something wrong with them, quote unquote, you know. And so that's all this feeling of I don't have love from within me, so I have to get it from somebody else, and that's the only way I know how to get it. So, and like I said, there's no judgment about it, but the key is to release that and to realize, you know, the love is what we are, and that comes from inside. And when we're there, we don't need to have and manifest that kind of stuff, so that you know, we get the attention or whatever. And it's really funny because it was like, you know, you think about when you sit in a room with a bunch of people who are, say, over 75 or 70, right? In general. Now, I know some 75-year-old people who are about as vibrant as a 35-year-old, but in general, culturally, how many times have you sat with a group of people who are like, I don't know, even 65 or older, and they start turning, and all their conversation is based upon what medications they're on, what doctor appointments they're going to this week, what, you know, what's ailing them, what's holding them back, what, you know, oh, you know, this old body. Listen to,
you can be in your 30s and 40s like that. I know people that are like that just kvetch, as my friend says.
I know, and I think, well, God, I'm 45 years old, and I'm fine. I'm perfectly healthy. I love hiking and exercise, and I'm limitless, and I sit and listen. You're right. I listen to others in my same age group, and they're like, oh, this body's getting old, and I'm like, seriously? We're just getting started. And so culturally, we get in this whole paradigm of, oh, I have to be a part of the group, so I have to have ailments, I have to have sickness. And it was really funny. I love my mother to death, and she's been a part of that for so long. She's changed quite a bit, but it was funny because one time, it's funny, as I always wondered if she ever noticed that I literally just changed the subject, because when she starts talking about doctor's appointments and this and that, I'm just like, this is outside of my reality, so I have nothing to input for this particular conversation, so I just changed the topic. But I never thought that she had gotten that until one time we were going out someplace, and we ran into a friend of hers, and she's like, oh, blah, 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 and this is my daughter, and blah, and in like 10 seconds, they jump right to something that's bothering them, or oh, and I've been having this stomach upset, and it's like, oh my gosh, because it's like I never have this conversation with anybody I know, but this is really common. I mean, it's common in our culture. And so what was really funny is they're going on, and I'm not contributing anything to the conversation, and after like 2 minutes, my mother looks at me, and she sort of laughs, and she looks at her friend, and she goes, well, yeah, I just have to excuse my daughter because she just doesn't get sick. So that was really funny, because I never realized that she ever even noticed that.
Right.
But the funny part is, it's really interesting on how much we do this, and we don't realize that we add to the negativity by sitting there and talking about it, and we create it and make it more real by saying, oh, I'm having this discomfort. And it's not that we don't want to talk about stuff, it's just that we don't want to create it as part of our identity, you know?
Well, you know what, just as you're talking, this is getting me excited now. I mean, it always gets me excited, but I had a sleepless night. So I got a lot on my mind. I'm ready to go to the beach. I'm thinking a lot about the healthcare law and Obamacare. And, you know, my hope is that it moves us in this direction and finally, I mean, gets us to realize, one, not only that we create our reality. I mean, I love the gluten study that you mentioned at the top, but that we have the power to change that, and that there are alternatives. We don't, because in my opinion, we're just doing the same old, and it's my hope that this pushes us past that, because people just think it's a mess and get fed up, and that we finally awaken and be like, okay, I have the power, you know, to create my life, and I have the power to change this if I want.
Right. And I saw somebody post on Facebook yesterday a little cartoon, and I have to go find it because I was thinking of posting it myself, because it was this cartoon of somebody in a doctor's office, and the doctor said, okay, you're not feeling, or you're feeling uneasy, or there's something that feels off. okay, well, meditate 20 minutes twice a day, you know, do physical exercise 30 minutes a day, you know, eat healthy food, get enough rest, and then, you know, come and talk to me in 4 to 6 weeks. That's what doctors should be saying to people. And I thought, that is exactly, because I've said this for years, preventive stuff is just so much more powerful anyway. So that goes off on another tangent altogether. But the thing is, but it does, but it doesn't. Because when we take charge of our own reality, right, when we actually say, okay, what is going to work for me in the highest and best way? Okay, maybe going to McDonald's 5 times a week doesn't really serve me in the highest and best way, right? I mean, it might be convenient, it might be, you know, comfort food, but if it's comfort food, then I have to look at myself and say, why do I need it? You know, why am I needing that comfort instead of something healthy for me, which I find huge comfort for.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm listening because I'm a comfort food kind of gal, and you know that's one of the things I still have to work on to release. But I love that we're talking about this. It's like Louise Hay's book, You Can Heal Your Life. You know, she has a whole little table in back that where she correlates whatever is going on with you and the emotion behind it. Because I mean, think about that. Because for a lot of people, that's a huge switch to say, okay, I have something within that can release, that can heal me. Because that's not even in some people's, you know, frame of reference.
Right, right. And the funny thing is, when I first meet with a client, when they first come in, one of the first things I tell them is, I don't heal you. Nobody heals you except for you. The only thing I do is I help you access the frequencies and the energy and release the stuff that you need to release so that you can heal yourself, that you just don't remember how to do yet yourself. And then I teach you how to fish and, you know, how to like do that yourself too. But, you know, and I will even say doctors don't heal you either, and neither do pharmaceuticals. It's all the tools we use in this reality so that we can access those points ourselves. And so it's different flavors of ice cream. The thing that we have lost sight of is, yes, we created all this wonderful stuff that can help alleviate things, but what we have done instead of using them as tools is we've allowed them to become crutches, you know? So it's like, oh, yeah, okay, I'm going to eat this crap that's not even really food, and I'm going to, like, you know, just do all this stuff to my body, and then, oh, yeah, I'll just go take my blood pressure medicine. Well, that's not the answer. The answer is, let's just change our lifestyle, you know, and be healthy and honor ourselves with love in the highest way, as our bodies are our temples.
But as you release stuff and examine whatever it is that causes that, then the need for that goes away.
It does. It does. Not only that, but then also, actually, the other side of that, so it's like this cycle, because the first thing is then the need for that goes away, right? Then, like, it's funny because I watch this all the time, because then somebody will go off like the really other extreme of like a total health freak nut, and, you know, even going vegan and juicing and doing all this stuff, which is great. But then you also get past that to a point of saying, well, I honor my body and I know what's good for my body, and if I have something that I like that might not be, you know, in the 3D, what we would consider the best, it's not going to affect me in a negative way because of the fact that my body has now cycled through into this place where it's really in a good state of love, so that it's not going to be negatively affected. So there's these cycles about that, and, you know, and it's funny because I say that all the time, you know, and this, yeah, apparently this does really tie into a whole lot of different topics, doesn't it? Because I think you talk about the Obamacare and everybody complains about this and everybody complains about that, and I'm like, you know what? Here's the thing. I started giving my kids, I mean, this is not even woo-woo. This is just total, like, the whole, like, being conscious of what we're eating and looking at what our choices are. But it's sort of like, I started feeding my family and myself natural and organic stuff back in about 2000 or 2001. That was when I was going through a whole series of releasing migraines, and when I did that and then started doing body work and stuff, it all went away, and I haven't had them since. But the funny thing is, I said, you know, this is how I see it in terms of the money that I pay up front for the food that is local and organic and fresher, right? Is that every year when my kids go to the doctor for their checkup, the doctor has to look through the thing to say, okay, so how's the last year been? Because they haven't been to the doctor since their last checkup, because they don't get sick. they are healthy, and when they get a cold or something, it's gone within like 2 days, or or even faster. So it's funny how, and of course they're in all this awesome energy, since I do energy work all the time, so they're also in a high vibration. So they're naturally healthier. So if we started living in a way where we're taking charge of who we are and responsibility for our reality, good grief, do you know how it would just cut into like the cost of healthcare? I mean, so that we wouldn't have to worry about anymore.
Okay, I just had a huge epiphany as we were talking. I used to literally, like clockwork, you could almost count on it by the day, would get the flu for 2 weeks every year. The last time I got the flu was the winter before I quit my job. Now, I'd always had jobs. Nothing that, not like they were all god awful. They just weren't really what made me happy. And then this last job I had was so awful. I was like, what's the worst that can happen? It can't get any worse than this. Quit. I haven't had the flu since. And working for myself. And as you're talking, I'm like, oh my gosh, wow. I sound like a mess. Allergies, blah, blah, blah. Had it, but I haven't had it since then. And to me, it was because the flu was like, oh my God, we've just got to get you out of here. This is not what you're meant to do.
Right.
But that's a great example, and I'm not kidding. I mean, for 15 years to 2 weeks.
Yeah, and many times, many people don't realize that sometimes they'll get themselves sick to give themselves a break, because they do not honor their own, space, their own energy, their own vibration. And so they'll run themselves down in their bodies, or their higher self says, okay, fine, you're not going to take time for us, then we're going to take time for us. We're going to stop ourselves dead, so you can't do anything else.
Until think about that. Just quitting my job, although I'm not saying go out and quit your job, but again, during this time, I should also add this. Because my last job was so horrible, I'm like, well, you attracted it, so you better figure out what's gross in you. And so that year, I did a lot of work on me and prepared to leave, but as a result, I got better health, which wasn't the intent, but was the outcome, one of the outcomes.
Right, and it's amazing how that happens, because that is so directly tied, and we don't really realize that. Allergies are irritants, right? If we have allergies or allergic reactions, skin rashes or anything like that, they're irritants. And it's not necessarily to just what's in the physical reality. It's what you're having an irritation with, at some level, that you're not recognizing and allowing it to come to the surface that way, so.
And I will just add, because that's the kind of person I am covered in poison ivy. So look, we put ourselves out there. We're not perfect. I try to always
still doing the human experience. So.
But look, I want people to know, hey, I am still a work in progress. I've cleared, but I still have, more to do. But I know in the long run what the benefits are, and I know, okay, if I deal with it now, it's okay, because I'll clear it and release it. And it's just another layer that's come up.
Yeah, it's funny that you bring that up, because I had a bout with poison ivy. Remember, I had that really bad one. What was that, like 3 years ago, right? 3 or 4? It was like 3 years ago, I think. And it was bad. It was like, but it was just in my forearms, because I'd been covered head to toe except for a T-shirt, and then I had work gloves, and it was between my wrist and where my T-shirt had been. And I had blisters on top of blisters. That was an interesting experience. And of course, I did a whole bunch of work on my being offended or by the ivy, having whatever, contention with it, or being offended by plants. I don't know. I can't even remember. There was so much stuff. But my guidance at that point was, you can do this without medicine. And actually I did, which was a really challenging thing for the ego, because there were moments when I was saying, oh my God, this sucks. And I was like, it was terrible. And all I did was I sat in meditation, and I cleared, and I cleared, and I cleared, and I cleared. And I got through it. And a friend of mine who was a nurse was going crazy. She was like, oh my God, you've got to take prednisone. I'm like, no, I don't. I don't have to do anything. I can just do, and I did, I think, like colloidal silver and something, whatever else I was guided to. That was the first time I was learning to go completely by guidance and to listen to my body. And I haven't really had a bout with it since. I had a little tiny spot of it last week that I got from my husband, who had it, and it was gone in like 2 days. So I mean, I have like a little mark where it was, but I mean, literally, it blistered, it cleared, it dried up, it cleared within like 2 days, because I had just I knew what the irritation was. I came up about it, and it was gone in 2 days. Where I know it can last just several weeks, because been there, done that. So I totally sympathize with you. But you know, you're going to go to the beach, and that's all going to clear it up anyway. You're going to be good.
Well, it's the one place where I can relax and enjoy myself. And Pierre, thanks for your kind words. And I want to remind everyone that if you'd like to ask a question, we're at the end now, but this is interactive. You know, Angela and I are doing this to create discussion, and we want to answer your questions and with whatever knowledge we have that can assist you on your journey. Okay, so what are your final thoughts for today? What do you want to leave people with?
Well, the real, I love the thing that came up that I think is so real for us to start recognizing is, number one, that everything is possible. Like, you know, we said that, and I can't say that enough. And the other thing is to start looking at the things that are physical in your life, right? And because there's, and Louise Hay's books book is a great start. It's a great basic reference. There's other ones out there too, but you know, it goes back to guidance. It goes back to starting to learn how to listen to your higher self, because eventually you can just ask, what is this about? And why is this manifesting into my reality? And then you can work on releasing it. And to know that we can start if we start honoring ourselves, right? And this goes back to all of the stuff we're talking about. You know, if we eat moderately and we, you know, and we honor like our bodies, and and that includes, like I said, it's like the meditation, the physical activity, you know, the eating well, and changing in your life what's making you feel like you're way down, like you said, like, you know, leaving your job, great example about not getting sick anymore. And if you are miserable in your job, then there's something else for you that I promise you is out there that will make your heart sing. It's just a matter of you going out and finding it and getting past what's preventing you from doing so. So yeah, there's a lot in there, but this is the first step, is to realize everything is possible. And so not to just say, okay, I have this because I have this irritation. The question is, why do I have this irritation? And it's not because of what 2 billion other people have.
Right, right. I just say go out there. Remember, first of all, you're a work in progress, and that we have many layers. So, like, I'm covered in poison ivy. It's all good. It's just part of the process. But start listening to yourself. Meditate. Go within. Follow your heart. When you start to do those things, those are simple steps that you can do that can get you on your journey to start the process and to release what you need to. All right, everyone, have a great day. Go out there and make your heart sing. We'll talk to you later. All right,
Thank
everyone.
you. Have a good one.
All right, bye.
Bye.